That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm Larry Flick. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Music. This is our talk show powered by the good, beautiful, kind folks of VERO. We get together and talk about music and talk about things related to music in a deeper way than you might be used to. As always, sitting in the co-pilot seat, my dear, dear friend, and we now know based on his Chinese zodiac, he's a pig. So please say hello to Pete the Pig Winfield.
Oh, great. That's the name I've always wanted. Honored.
We're also joined by two young women who, in different ways, are making a very interesting impact on music right now. From the UK, I'm delighted to welcome a young woman whom I met a couple of years ago. Now, I met Eyelar because she had posted a song she had written about her dad. And I was so insanely crazy about this song that I started playing it on the radio. And she just happened to be coming to New York, where I was living at the time. And I said, darling, come up on my radio show. We've been friends ever since. And she's having a career that goes from strength to strength. And she's currently the lead singer and co-writer of a huge club record called Dopamine, which is a collaboration between Eyelar and Purple Disco Machine.
Wow, what an amazing introduction. You really pulled out all the stops. Thank you.
And now I'm going to introduce you to a new friend. She blends lots of different ideas and sounds in her music. She is smarter than the average pop star. She is vulnerable and soulful and a little mystical, but above all things, she is a strong, powerful woman in her own right. Her name is Cheyenne Elliott. So let's begin. Let's begin with, I always say the purest truth comes from the simplest question. How do you see yourself as a human being, as an artist? Let's start with you, Cheyenne.
Yeah.
Straight in from Larry. Gotta love that question as the first question. Only Larry Flick. Love
it's
it.
a great question. It's a full-bodied question.
Love it. We love it.
I think for myself, I'm 27. I've been in the musical game, whatever you want to call it, for some years now. And I think the biggest takeaway that I have sort of honed in on and began to cherish is that my artistry and that person that I want to portray to the world really is who I am day to day, waking up in the morning, making my coffee. That's Cheyenne. And I think for a while I tried to really separate the two, whether it be going on stage and putting on this quote unquote show with this different sort of energy that wasn't really connecting to the audience in the way that I wanted it to, which I've sort of now looking back on it, I can see why. Or the energy that I was giving going into the studio, I was in full-blown character mode. And I think I've met a lot of people who, especially actors, obviously you get into character. And as you are a performer, you have a character. But I think for myself, what helps me be the most authentic version of Cheyenne is to be Cheyenne, full on every day in every possible way. And if you're living in your truth and you're standing in your truth, it shows through your music. It shows, one of the biggest R&B charting women in the world right now basically wrote an entire album about her trauma and her tragedy and her child and what she's going through at this moment. And, she didn't separate from that. And I really respect that. And I think that's why she's doing so well. And that's what I want to be able to give to my future fans, my current fans, my friends, my family. I want to give them Cheyenne.
Before we move on to Eyelar and Pete, I want to follow up with you, though, and ask, how much does your lineage, how much did it inhibit you at first? Because we're talking about, you're related to Dionne Warwick, you're related to Whitney Houston, your father is David Elliott. You have this, I would become a banker if I were related to these people, because I would
You know
feel,
what? I thought about it.
I would feel paralyzed by the
Yeah.
expectations, but I would also feel paralyzed by the negativity that people would throw at me because of what they would view as being entitlement, even if it didn't exist.
That balance is something I'm still to this day currently working on, you know, and I don't ever want it to sound like, oh, poor pity me story. I come from an amazing legacy, an amazing family who told me, if you want to be a banker and music is not for you, that's fine. You know, there's no pressure to carry on some torch or some, you know, crazy path that might not be your path. But I've discovered music is something I love. Music is what I want to do. And I mean, it does carry a lot of weight. The family carries a lot of weight, but I think internally, if I can just understand and respect who I am as a woman and know that you can only be yourself, if I can wake up every day and say that to myself, then it really helps. And I've had a lot of comments over the years of that exact question. How does it, the pressure? I think pressure, it's corny, but pressure builds diamonds. And I think that becoming my own woman, honing in on my own sound, and I'm lucky, I'm blessed, I have the support of an amazing family behind me. I think all of those put together have helped me find peace and balance and harmony.
And your own independence, because when you listen to Cheyenne Elliott's music, you were going to hear a woman who carries none of the ghosts of her family, particularly on the new single Crash, which is such a beautiful, singular piece of work. Eyelar, how would you just identify yourself? How do you view yourself as a woman, and how does that move into the art you make? I met you when you were first really sculpting.
I've been sculpting for a while. I think it's hard to be an artist if you don't know exactly who you are as a person, and taking the time to really know who you are as a person is just so important, because once you start in the music industry and once you start releasing and you kind of get into the whole rat race of this game, it's just really tough. So when you know who you are, then it's only going to be easier to cope with everything. So I've always tried to like find myself. I've always been sort of like different to my friends, or like, you know, not that I'm special, because we're all special in our own ways, but I've always been paying a little bit more attention to the way I think and who I was, because I grew up, I'm an Iranian. My parents are from Iran, so they moved to the Netherlands when my mom was pregnant of me, and I grew up in a very Dutch area. Like, there weren't many people with different names, so I always knew that I was different to my friends who had like normal, or not normal, but like Dutch names, and I always just felt different. And then I tried to fit in for a really long time, and obviously that didn't work, because yeah, it's just sometimes that's a little bit boring and it doesn't fit my personality. So I think moving to London really helped me be free, because here in London, anything goes and you can kind of do whatever you want, and it's kind of cool. And now, and since I moved here, I've just expressed until I kind of like unpeeled this like cute little onion. And now I think the word to describe me is, yeah, I'm pretty free. And I'm free, but like that doesn't mean that I'm always this free spirit. It just means that that's who I identify with, and that's what I hold on to, even in days where I don't feel as free. So I think that is kind of also what I want to really express in my art and in my music.
But you know, I want to jump in, because
Yeah.
the thing that is so striking about you to me is you are coming up through the ranks in a variety of ways. You're working on your own music, but you're also collaborating with club producers and club DJs. As an old club dog of many, many, many years, I know how domineering they can be. And the thing that's so fascinating, and it's particularly true of Dopamine, you push your personality to the forefront of all of your collaborations. None of their tracks sound the same with you as they do with other artists. I would love to know, though, briefly, how you I guess, convince, for lack of a better word, or how you muscle through the dominance of a mostly male,
Yeah.
forged field that treat
Yeah.
women, particularly young, beautiful women, as pawns, as voices, as a means to their end of success.
I think it's pretty accurate. For me, it's funny with this song, because this song, I wrote it with a couple of my friends on Zoom during the first lockdown, and we sent it to Purple Disco Machine, and he really loved it, but I didn't think I was gonna like stay on it. But when he heard it, there were other artists who cut the song and were gonna like be featured on it, but in the end, the songs just didn't sound the same as my original vocal. So he was kind of like, I would love you to stay on it because your version sounds the best, because we wrote it together. I'm quite good at giving it all my feeling and all my emotion, because I love recording, I love writing, and I love singing. So when I sing a vocal, it's not going to be half-assed. Like, it's going to be like, I'm going to give you everything.
Yeah, I do. And Pete, one of the great pleasures that you and I have is sitting here doing this with a number of different people over the course of these episodes. And I'm sure you're noticing, as I am, that we have two very strong, powerful women, but they're very different in that one is like a pot of boiling water and one is like a kettle that's just blowing boiling heat into the atmosphere. They're both really intense, but in different ways. So as someone who's been in the game for a minute, you're working on an album right now, which means you're reckoning with who you are as an artist and as a person right now. Where do you fit on this spectrum between the steaming kettle and the boiling pot of water?
This always comes up only here, really, which is because of you, which I love and hate you for, is that this always comes up because it's relevant. When I first got signed or whatever, it was, I think, 2008 now. It started this trajectory. I mean, it probably started earlier than that, but it recognizably and career-wise started at that time. This sense of pressure and anxiety about, we look for validation of other people and in what we do, the record industry, to validate who we are, whether it's a record deal or a manager or a publisher. They act as some kind of signifiers of that we are worth something, whether to ourselves or to an audience or other people. And it just sets off this trajectory of like this total tightrope of self-love and self-loathing all at the same time, and and where it ended me up was in an absolutely terrible place. And I ended up deciding I didn't want to do any of this anymore. I ended up in rehab. I'm now sober 5 years and all of a sudden making a record again, which I didn't expect to be doing. I convinced myself I was just going to write for other people because it was safe, safe in this studio, and I don't have to think about what I am or who I am. But it turns out through making this record is that, and the most surprising and beautiful thing about all of this, and definitely by proxy of the sobriety, is I actually don't bring that into the room anymore. I find myself being able to be that 16-year-old again, that when I sit at the piano or the guitar, I'm not thinking about myself and who I am and who I'm presenting. And it's just, that is such a relief that I'm when I hear the music back, it just feels more open, more authentic and more free, because I'm not thinking about myself or who I am in relation to other artists. It's just instinctive. And that may mean to other people they don't like it as much as they like my other music, but for the first time I just don't care. And like, that is freedom.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm really happy for you. I can well.
Yeah.
Go on, Eyelar. Finish your thought.
Yeah, no, I just really related to that story. Thank you for sharing that, because I was literally in the same boat, writing for other people for the last like 5, 6 years, and I've had some success, and it's been really great, and I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had. But I had like a few months ago, I had a meeting with my management, and I just broke down in tears, and they were like, what do you want to do? Like, because right now you have one foot in one door, which is writing for other people, and one foot in the other, which is your own project. Like, what is it that you want to do? Make a decision and go for it, like wholeheartedly. Like, just do it, because so you can't do everything like half. So, and I said, well, I want to do my project, and right then my manager literally looked at the diary, he cleared everything, cleared all the sessions for the other people. He was like, right, let's do this, like, let's start. And since then, I've literally been in the same boat as Pete, like, literally don't care. I'm not comparing myself to other people anymore. I don't care what anyone is doing. I'm literally the only person I'm competing with now is myself, and that's super liberating.
So,
Yeah.
Cheyenne, you sounded like you wanted to jump in and share something as well. Did you?
I mean, I think both of those are inspiring stories. And I love that Eyelar said, you're not comparing. You shouldn't compare yourself to anybody. And I think that's human nature. We all do it. I do it. But if you can really find peace with being yourself and standing your ground and staying in your lane, and not kind of get, clouded by judgment or that noise that often comes while creating, then I think you really can make the most incredible product, and just being happy. I think really for me too, now I've gone through multiple stages of creating music, different genres, different producers, I mean, we all have, but and I think now I'm writing my music. I'm really hands-on with everything that I'm doing, and I feel proud of the result, because it's coming from a place that it's coming from me.
What's very interesting about this convergence that we're experiencing in this very moment is each person is probably at your least self-conscious. And it shows in the work that I've heard, it shows in the behavior that I've seen in you, Pete. When I go through all of your music, Cheyenne, your newest single is the most naked, bare song, not just, I mean, in every possible way. In its arrangement, it's a very simple song. In its lyrics, it's deeply vulnerable. Eyelar, you're singing right now with a ferocity that you didn't have in those early records. So I'm curious to know from all of you the point where you said, I mean, we got a little bit of it, but I want to zero in a little more closely in on the dropping of the facade and how it makes you feel as dissected artists, because you're not doing this in private, right? You're doing this in front of people. So I want to know about losing that self-consciousness.
Yeah.
Losing that self-consciousness. Jump in, Pete.
This is the first time I've ever spoken about this ever. I've always been very careful about whether or not I even ever should, but Larry, it's you. You have a way. So I didn't do the traditional rehab, right? I went to, I knew that there was something I needed to kind of untie or unknot that wasn't going to be helped by being given prescription medication. Not, look, each to their own, but for me, I knew it wasn't. I knew that was going to be a band-aid, and that was going to be another thing that I stacked on other things. So I just needed to go like, right, what's at the root of this, and start again. So I ended up in the jungle in Thailand doing a kind of 3 months. Basically, I had to live like essentially a monk, and did all these spiritual practices. It's not as crazy as it sounds. It was just very rigorous you know, it was like up at 5 a.m, physical exercise, then meditation. And it was just that for 3 months solidly. And diet was crazy important. Point is, the last thing that my kind of teacher said to me was, I want you to do ayahuasca, because you need an experience which is gonna, you've done all this kind of training now, and you need something which is gonna blow this open. And I was really nervous. Obviously, I was a recovering drug addict. So the idea for me of doing something like that was incredibly scary. I didn't understand it. I'd heard all these horror stories, etc. But I trusted him. And so I did it. And you know, it's such a personal experience, and it's not, I've literally never spoken about it, and I won't go into details because it's something you can't explain, but for me, it was the death of my ego in the negative sense of the word. After that, day by day, it's not like you wake up and you're like, but I just noticed day by day I was kind of shedding a skin of negative self-involvement, and the just constant story that our brains, especially creatives, is like that comparison thing. Are you good enough? And the answer is never yes, you know. That voice in our heads is never like, you're doing well. It's always like, why haven't you? You could be. What about other people? Just over time, that voice got quieter and quieter and quieter. And so for me, it was a combination of making a decision, because I'm not saying you need to go to the jungle and do hallucinogenics. The point is that was my catalyst to realize that I'd been carrying a story around about who I am, and I just dumped it and started again. And so now when something adds on to it, I have the space, because I'm of my sobriety, to go like, actually, I don't need that, you know. So it's about just, I have choice, and I never thought I did. We all always have had, but I never thought I did.
It's the hardest thing in the world is to I don't know what's harder, to embrace the fact that you have choice, or to recognize that maybe you knew you had choice and you chose not to
Choose.
Absolutely, we're terrified of
that you chose passivity over activity.
It's a responsibility.
Yeah, because it's very, very, very scary. You know, when I moved here 8 or 9 months ago, I've lost count. It was probably the most aggressive choice I've made in my life ever. And I still fear it, and I still fight it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so these conversations help me, because while I'm asking the questions of you, I'm asking the questions of me as well. And so Cheyenne, you know, I keep clocking into Crash.
Yeah.
And I think I keep clocking into it because I had such a visceral reaction to it when I first heard it. And I think it's because of the vulnerability in the vocal. And so
Thank you.
to me, it was like just the rejection of affect, which meant the rejection of self-consciousness.
Yes.
So tell me about the day you laid down that vocal, and the knowledge that someone might hear it. Actually, lots of people were going to hear it,
right?
And they were going to hear it. So, you know, that song is very different from your other songs.
It is.
It's a new era.
It is. I love that. It is a new era of Cheyenne, of who I am. So Crash is a long time coming. I think it's a song for me that I probably should have written years ago. Even if I hadn't experienced that, I should have been able to tap into being vulnerable enough to express things that I understand and want to speak about. And I quick rundown, because I think Pete's story was very moving and very open and honest. And I think for me, my experience of letting go of the ego, self-conscious side I grew up in a family of music. I've been on stages for years, and I've been kind of put in this realm of elegance, class, dignity, really high standards of what is to be expected, not coming from anyone in particular, but really from myself, because I respect my family so much and I respect that legacy, and I've understood that from such a young age. And my grandmother, I know that you've met her, but whoever gets the chance to meet her, she's the funniest woman, but she is so classy and so poised. And that is exactly who she has, what she has instilled in me. And I'm thankful for that. But I think, that's a lot to sort of understand at a young age, at 12 years old, to be this, prima donna, perfect princess. It's a lot. So fast forward, about 4 years ago, I did my first television show, which was a singing competition. I had never been on TV before. It was a wild experience for me. A lot of fun, but one of the comments came from one of the other artists who were on the show, and she was a contestant as well. I respect her. I think she's an incredible artist. But she said, I think Cheyenne's a great singer, but I don't really think she's an artist. And at the time, that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I didn't really understand what she meant by that. And now I understand that I was sort of carrying this persona of who I expected myself to be. I wasn't living my truth. I was singing from, is that note perfect? Am I executing this right? How do I look? It was not authentic. It was a show. It was a performance. And I think now that I get to watch that, I physically can go online. I can relive that moment visually and see that moment and that version of myself to now. I'm so thankful that I had that moment, because it gave me the opportunity to say, you know what? She was kind of right. That really wasn't me. And now fast forward to Crash, I'm writing music and I'm performing music and I'm laying down vocals that mean something to me, that really let me be myself, that I can, if anyone questions my artistry now, that's absolutely their opinion, but at least I can say, I don't really agree with that, because I'm really living my truth and I'm proud of this. So that for me, it wasn't as spiritual as his experience, but for me, that was kind of a moment where I got to look at myself and be like, you know what, this isn't your truth.
To me, they're both spiritual in very different ways. So Eyelar,
Absolutely.
the thing that I've always been curious about you is that you run counter to the perceptions of your heritage. You run counter to everything. To me, you are the embodiment of fierce and rebellious and joyful. Everything about you is enormous. It's one of the things I think is most special about you. And for those of you who can't really tell, she's teeny weeny in actual physical stature, but she's got the biggest presence. How hard was it for you to unleash your true self, given your heritage, given where you were born, given how you were raised, given all of the expectation, and you're a woman.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
yeah,
being an Iranian woman, my goodness.
When you go back to Iran, like I Iran every year when I was young, and just the fact that I have to, like, that it's mandatory that I wear a headscarf, you do come back and think, wow, we have so much freedom in the Netherlands or in Europe, or but I've always been, I was very lucky because my parents were my dad was very eccentric. Like, he was definitely a weirdo, and he he was amazing, and he really encouraged me, because my personality is so much like my dad's, and he always encouraged me to dream and to dream big, take risks and stuff. But yeah, growing up, I mean, it's funny because I did a Dutch TV thing last week, and I brought my manager from the UK, and he met my friends from 10 years ago who I went to high school with, and he was like, whoa, like, I would have never expected them to be your friends because they seem so normal. And if you compare me now to 10 years ago when I was in high school, like you won't recognize me because I just looked so different. I carried myself differently. I was much more like quiet and you know, quite like tame, or I guess. And I was always like dancing and singing and stuff, but I was definitely not encouraged in my surroundings to be creative or to be different. Or like I had these weird boots one day that my mom brought back from Iran, super furry, huge. And I went to school and my classmates, like my friends, were literally like, "What are you wearing? Like, looks so weird." Like, no, no. And that was of like weirdness at the time because I looked very like I didn't express with like fashion or anything. But it was when I moved to London, I just started doing it more and more and more. And that's why my heart really London, because I feel so expressive and free. And now my family, because in the beginning I was a bit worried about even the songs that I'm writing now, like a lot of it is very expressive and I touch on a lot of things like my sexual experiences, my, even experimenting and all of these things that I want to be very honest about. But obviously, yeah, my brother is not gonna love my song that I'm gonna sing about having, you know, a lesbian experience. Like, yeah, he's not gonna love that. But that's the Iranian culture is just very, it's just very yeah, not, I wouldn't say it's progressive, and I am a very progressive, I want to be progressive, so it just clashes a lot, you
So
know.
how do each of you, and we'll let Eyelar finish, pick this thread up. How do you respond to people when they react to your identity, to what you're putting out into the world, whether it be the crazy, the intensity, the ugly truth, the
Mm.
hard stuff, the light stuff? At what point did you start to see that not only was it okay for you to be who you were, but that it was actually attractive? It was
Well,
appealing. It was building this circle of support and love and joy around you.
I think for me now, I can clearly see that people respond really well to it, and it almost like it's like a safe space for everyone to kind of do the same thing. But I can definitely notice a difference between that and at the start when I was doing it. I remember my friends being like, what are you talking? Like, what are you doing? They didn't really respond well to it in the beginning because they just thought I was in my own world or like, you know, a bit kooky. But now, but maybe that's because they were afraid to also step out of their like,
Yeah.
you know, maybe they were scared. And now that like my friends now, the same friends from 10 years ago, they love it now. They're like, wow, like it's amazing. So
You've
now
inspired them.
maybe, I mean, that would be a nice thought. Maybe they're not scared anymore. Like maybe at the
Yeah.
time they were scared, or maybe I triggered something in them at the time that made them feel uncomfortable about themselves. But there's definitely a big difference in the reaction. And now I feel like more and more people feel comfortable or like encourage people to be honest and to be authentic and to be like just to tell your truth, you know, or whatever that's good or whether it's bad.
So what about you, Cheyenne? Because you are again breaking down the walls,
hmm
and it feels like it's a fairly new experience for you.
It
Is that
is.
fair?
It's absolutely fair. I think for me, being able to write about, I mean, things I really am, like crash is something in my life I'm personally dealing with, even at this moment. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'll write music and that's my come to peace moment. But it's really not. It just sort of opens the door to think about what I really just wrote and be more vulnerable with myself. And I really do. It's a funny dynamic because I'm thankful that I mostly grew up in an era where there was no social media. But I love the fact that we have social media as artists now, because I get to see the reaction of not only my close friends, but friends that I've cultivated online who are like, we love that you're speaking on things that we relate to. We really love that you're talking about vulnerable parts of your life. You're not just singing about whatever that, you know, and I love that feedback. And I've had women message me privately and they'll say, I did another sort of talk podcast a few weeks ago with this woman, and she said, my previous single Sugarcane, she's like, that song made me call my ex and I have a discussion with him. And I said, oh, I hope that went well for you. And she's like, it did. He's moved on, but at least I got to say my piece. But for me, that was awesome, because what I wrote inspired her to call her ex and talk her shit and be like, I hope we can cuss. I'm sorry.
You can say whatever you want, love.
Sorry. But she called him and she had that closure. And I really love that it like brought me to tears, because I was like, man, like she's getting to do something that maybe she wouldn't have done if maybe she didn't hear my song. I don't know. But moments like that make me really happy to be as authentic as I can, because it inspires other people to be their authentic self and to take risks.
Yeah. So Pete, I have to throw you just a little curve with this question, a little extra sauce on top. Because you're in a very interesting place that's slightly different from Cheyenne and Eyelar, who have records out right now. You're building a record. It's your first record in a long time. I haven't heard any of it yet, but I suspect it's going to be different than your first two, because you're in a different space now than you were with those first two. You have an audience. They have expectations. They have an understanding of who they think you are. And you're going to be in many ways reintroducing yourself, which means losing that self-consciousness to your audience, to your community, maybe for the first time again. I mean, when I first came out of the closet as a gay man, the smartest thing someone ever said to me was, the difference between you and other people of other niches is that you have to ID yourself. You have to bell the cat every time you walk into a room. You have to make that decision. Are you going to let all these people know who you are, or are you going to pretend and lie? It's a luxury, but it's also a choice, right? It's not a luxury that a person of color has, but it's a luxury that gay people have. But it's also a frightening thing that gay people deal with, because you have to scope the room out every time. How are you dealing with that?
The one thing I would wish on any young artist just starting out and worried about like how they fit in or where they fit in or what's going to happen is I would just wish them some failure. And the reason I say that is because I thought I had it all figured out. When I first signed my first deal, I was like, oh, right. So I did some songs, people like them, and now my career's set forever. And I went down a trajectory of listening to people because I just was following that. So like, oh, why don't you try this music or work with this writer? Yeah, I'll do that. And you want to be easy to work with and cordial and all these things that you think are important, and of course they are, but not to the detriment of the art, right? But I didn't know that at the time. You just want it to work so much, and because if this one thing doesn't work, it's all gonna fail, and you're never going to be able to make music again, and everyone's going to hate you, and you have to go back to your small town and be like, guess I'm not who I said I was or who you thought I was, and all that, like, ugh. And then it all fell apart. But like, I worked really hard on this record for 3 years and worked with all these people, did everything they said, even when I knew instinctively it was the wrong thing. Like, I'll never forget, I was trying to, at the time, it was like, I wanted to make this really stripped down record. It was around the time of like Damien Rice and things like that. I just wanted to make this really powerful, almost just guitar, piano, vocal thing. And, you know, typical label are like, yeah, we really see the vision. We love it. And then you try that and it doesn't quite work. So they go, yeah, we still love that. But how about exactly what's on the radio? And you go, oh, well, if I don't say yes, okay, I'll try it. And you just, it's just never going to work, because you're the more and more you say yes, the further away you're getting from your integrity and blah, blah, blah. All fell apart. But that was the day when I got because of course you think all these people are your friends for 3 years, and then they drop you in an email that's to your manager, not even to you. And you just like, I've been broken up with and you couldn't even call me. Like, what? And you realize you're just a number at that moment. And so I think either that's the moment an artist either goes, this isn't for me, I can't handle this like continuous hurdles, or you go, right, well, I'm going to do it my way then and just make what I like. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, at least I die by my own sword, which is what you were saying, Cheyenne. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, I suppose the reason I said all that is I don't feel the weight of expectation of what people are going to think as much, because I know I love it. I can really rely on that. And so if people love it, oh my God, that makes me so, like, I'll find that really moving, because it's a direct line of communication. But if not, I don't know. But it's only because I failed first, you know?
So I want to tell you all something. The beauty of getting to sit here and talk with you and ask you really nosy, intimate questions is a very, very, it's a privilege. And the fact that you're willing to be so open, so vulnerable, so real is also a privilege. You know, in talking about identity, you know, mine as a journalist lies in playing the role of the person watching or listening, in that I try to ask the questions that people are wondering but might be afraid to ask. Sometimes they're not the most delicate questions, which is why I'm not a big star, but it's why I feel like I can sleep at night when I do lay my head down. You know, it's not easy to be out in the world and have people look at you and stare at you. And, you know, for every person who supports you, we haven't talked about this and we don't need to, there are 10 people who are going to try to knock you down, partly because they're angry that they've not had the courage that each of you have, and partly because they're just unhappy and fearful that you have an answer that they can't quite figure out. As I ask them to be gentle with them, I ask you to kind of keep that in mind and rise and continue to be prideful in everything you do, because each of you are spectacular and unique and brilliant and beautiful. And
Harry,
what?
I said, so are you.
Oh,
Yes.
You're very sweet. But
Yes.
I'm very grateful. And I think, you know, everyone learned something very special about each of you. And I know that it's going to inspire them to go and listen to your music. And that's really what this program is all about. This is Let's Talk Music. It's powered by the fine folks at VERO. Are you part of VERO? Well, what the fuck is wrong with you? Catch up. Join the party. It is the best place for freaks, geeks, and musicados to come together and talk about music, share music. And we'll be doing this again very soon. I'm Larry Flick. Thanks for joining us.
You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.